This is the Acts 2028 podcast,
where two young Church of God pastors
discuss the challenges and victories we face in leading revitalization.
I am TJ Samuelu.
I am Brian Seidel.
I am in an urban context in Seattle, Washington.
I am in a suburban and rural context in Boise, Idaho.
I am in a liberal state.
I am in a conservative state.
My ministry background is in missions.
My ministry background is in youth ministry.
And yet we are both in our first lead roles.
To help God revitalize the existing church in the Pacific Northwest.
We are helping each other.
And you.
To truly live out Acts 2028.
Hey, TJ, here we are again back for another episode. And maybe our listeners are wondering where we were because we've actually had an extra week in here. We have not recorded. So if you're sitting there waiting for new episodes to drop every 2 weeks, we're sorry because we haven't done that. We're a little bit behind schedule, but life's been pretty crazy for both of us. And we're just finally now getting back into getting this one recorded.
Yeah. And so I will take the lion's share of responsibility on that. We've been busy. And so I think we had an opportunity to engage with a regional convention. So we were out for a week. And, just as we navigate these times, just as prayer, we have a child center, we're looking to partner with a school, and we have a lot of things that are in front of us that even though we check in and we do these things, ministry continues to happen. And so that's where I've been in with a lot of my time. And so Brian's been trying to help right the ship as constantly he does. But I was definitely out even more from the standpoint of that. But I think those netted some really good experience. It's always good. We've talked about that on the podcast of encouragement, not only from the enrichment standpoint of, empowering and equipping yourself and continuing to do that as a pastor, not only in our daily life and our Devo, but from a community point. It was just not too long ago, we had Pastor Allen on here and he hadn't implemented it, but, he talked about the concept of coming together with other pastors under the premise of encouraging one another, lifting one another up. And, whether that's for planning or just an opportunity to, be encouraged. So we got a bit of that. I would be lying if I said I wasn't tired, but I think that's par for the course in the state that we are in, as well as the kiddos, my kids and their part, having three between the ages of 12 and 8 and sports and all those things as you're coaching and I'm coaching as well to help them out. It is a crazy, crazy time, but I'm so glad that we're back, that we get a chance to discuss these things. And again, I think that kind of sets the framework for where we're at and why we do this. We are pastors that are navigating these things, and we see the value in them because we're walking through it. There's a transparency, there's an authenticity to that. And so, yes, we pushed out a week, but hopefully we're back on track. And as you listen to this, you'll be encouraged today, whether that is a role of leadership, and that you have that, and that's from a pastoral standpoint, that's from an elder standpoint, that's from a key lay person standpoint, because we need all of those roles to come together. We know that that's the point I'm left with in the transition for hiring people. So if you listen to our podcast, you're in the Seattle area, man, we would love to chat with you. But anyhow, thanks B for leading us in a little bit, but thanks for holding down the ship and keeping us going.
Yeah. Well, and to say, I know you're taking the majority of the fault here on this, but to say that you threw a couple of times that I couldn't do because of my coaching role with the golf team and different things as well. And also, like I said, you were out last week for our regional convention for Church of God, and I was thinking and I didn't go to it, and so I missed out on that community and that connection with our larger Church of God people. And I was realizing that this is kind of I think this is the first one I've missed in several years. For sure. And so to say that I did have a little FOMO, of missing out on it. But I stayed here so that I could, there was actually 2 different golf tournaments and some really important practices that I was going to miss if I went to that convention. So So, and this, again, the church always has to take precedence over my coaching commitments, but this travel again, got bumped because of my coaching commitment. So like you said, we're living those lives. We're kind of keeping those priorities in check and in the right orders. And sometimes we have to be able to make those decisions. And so, for sure. Yeah. But life's crazy and we all know that. So, and maybe that's an encouragement to you if you're out there and you feel like your life's too crazy. And so I guess, but that's just telling you that ours are just as crazy as yours. So, but I think that's, again, part of the premise that we hope to present here, right? Is just, like you said, our transparency of just that, man, we're just a couple of pastors trying to figure it out just like you. So, and we have, there's a lot of moving parts to that. So, for sure. So with that said, though, too, we push it out. Now we're a couple of weeks after, but we had intended in talking about just kind of the aftermath of Easter and the aftermath of these big events. And obviously Easter is a big event for our faith. It's a big event for just church in general, not just Church of God churches, but just for faith, right? I mean, it's the central holiday of our faith. In a lot of ways, Easter is one of the higher attended times for church attendance, typically. Also, there's a lot of extra work around the time of Easter, whether it's extra services for Monday, Thursday, Good Friday, maybe community events of, Easter egg hunts or kind of those types of things that sometimes we get roped into and connected with, as well as even just having family in town, right? And because it is still a cultural and family, event. And so, Easter can be incredibly draining, I think, especially for church leaders. And so, today, as we kind of dive into that, now we're even a couple of weeks after it, but like you said, the craziness of Easter, we just both dove into more where, like you said, just life has continued to be crazy. But what we want to address today and just kind of talk is, how do you deal with the huge letdown, right? The day after, or the weeks after a big holiday or a big event. And again, and maybe it's not Easter, maybe it's not a holiday, maybe it's even just a big event that you put on as a church, or a big, again, in our community here in the Boise area, we had the Greg Laurie Foundation came in and did this big Boise harvest deal. And it was literally last weekend. And so, is this big revival, event in our community and in our valley. And there was this huge turnout, kind of this big, high, of this event. And then, but the reality is you still go to work the next day. Right. And there's all these, things that we have to do. So, we're just kind of calling out the reality, right? That if we just go from event to event, or big, huge, things like Easter or like Holy Week, that there's a big emotional, there's a big spiritual letdown. There's things that we just have to deal with as leaders in that kind of aftermath of these events.
So B, maybe for the sake of it, let's also say, not for a boastful standpoint, but so people understand, they know that our bandwidth, because of our resources, whether that's staffing or otherwise, are a little different. But maybe where we could also jump in is kind of maybe paint a picture of what it is. I know you did some Holy Week type extras on that, so maybe just run through that a little bit, and then I'll share mine as well, of what that week kind of looked like, so people can understand. Maybe someone's listening and they know that these events take place at their church, but they don't understand maybe in the totality to look at them. So often some churches start, I was talking to someone while we were at this before said conference, and they were talking about, like a Fat Tuesday pancake feed part of that. And that's part of theirs. So what did, real quickly, not again for a boastful sake, but what did that week kind of look like for you guys? And then I'll fill in ours too. I think it was a little bit different. And, from an intentionality standpoint, our community looks a little different. And so, let's run through that real quick and see what that
Sure.
week looked like.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we've already talked about in previous episodes, I plan out my sermon series, right? And Easter is one of those things that I literally center my teaching calendar on. And so, so this year, again, I did a teaching series that I started a few weeks before, Holy Week. And so leading into, and that's one of the challenges of preaching is kind of, again, like Easter, Christmas, especially when it's the same story every year. So you have to kind of mix that up. But so I started a message series leading into that. And then, so there's a little extra work there kind of planning, but that's just kind of the normal things. We've been over that before. But so then we start with Palm Sunday, which was just our regular service times. But then we were a few weeks into the sermon series building up to that. And then as of Holy Week, we had extra services. So we did a Monday, Thursday service, foot washing service this year, which this is the first time that we've ever done one at Oregon Trail since I've been here. And Oregon Trail has traditionally done them in the past, but my understanding was they stopped doing them just because of lack of participation. But that was even several years before, the church kind of went into downturn or whatever. So, and before I was ever here. So we did that. Again, there was one of my board members that just really wanted to do it, just felt convicted. And so she played a big role in that service as well. But so we did a Thursday night service, Monday, Thursday foot washing. Then we have, and then we had a Good Friday service on Good Friday. And that one, again, was communion and again, another, message in the series. I planned that out to do that. And then, and actually it wasn't really because of Holy Week, but on Saturday, we had our men's breakfast on that Saturday, and it's just the standard kind of, like the, third Saturday of the month, but it's the way it fell. So it was on that weekend. So we had that event. And then of course, Resurrection Sunday, and which is our regular, for us, it was our regular schedule. And again, that's kind of one of the things we're going to talk about of ways to get through this but that's part of my philosophy is that we do just a kind of a normal service schedule on Easter. But it's our two normal services, but we did have extra attendance. So that does put extra strain on all of our teams. And so, like our kids team was stretched thin because they had their kids numbers actually doubled on Easter for us, which again is just puts a lot of strain on those teams. Again, there was a lot of strain on our greeting team because there was a lot more, again, just our support staff and greeting teams because there's just way more people, right? And like, again, we print twice as many bulletins, right? There's just kind of all of those things, just extra work in all of those things. Also looking at that, realized that with Thursday, Friday, Saturday, because I spoke to men's breakfast too for that day because our men's director is just different stuff. And then Saturday, so I literally spoke 4 days in a row. And I had Sunday and then Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and twice on Sunday, right, with our two services. So to say so again, literally just physically my voice was like gone on Monday, right, like after all of that. So the other thing that we did on Easter too, which was extra on all of our people, was we did door hanger invites. And so we literally canvassed neighborhoods the week and a half leading up to Easter. And so put out those door hanger invites and into different neighborhoods in our community and we had our people in our church that had to take them and put them in their neighborhoods. And they said we went and picked out certain specific neighborhoods that we canvassed and put out those invitations. And so we had, again, volunteers that came to do that and handed out. And I said, I myself, again, leading from, by example, I think I handed out probably somewhere between 500 and 600 of those door hangers, like myself, just going door to door. My wife helped me a ton. We did our whole neighborhood, our whole subdivision, which is like almost 500 homes just in our neighborhood. But again, we canvassed it and did it. And like I said, my kids helped, my wife helped, and we did that. We had some different families in our church that took it on, and they did a ton of extra work with those invites. The awesome thing was that we had people come from them. Like we actually saw some fruit from it. And even on Easter morning, like people came in and was like, yeah, we got your invitation. We're here, so that was really cool to see the fruit come of that. But so again, it was just a big strain on extra things like door hangers, again, big strain, especially even on our production teams of doing, three services in a week. And so, worship team, production team, all that kind of stuff. So it was that's kind of what our Holy Week looked like. How about for you guys at Fairview?
Yeah. So we didn't do Monday, Thursday. We started our week on Friday, and Friday was more of a reverence, somber, in remembrance kind of piece. And so it was more of a drop-in time period that I was there for a couple hours and navigated that. And I led people through communion as they came individually. There was also stations where they could reflect and have that time so they could write prayer requests and put them at the cross, or they could light a candle and they could do those things. And one of the things I emerged from that was we had a woman that showed up that had been watching us online, but had never been on campus. And she had to catch public transportation, which is called Access here, to get to us. And she did that. And so we got a chance to hang out afterwards because it was a busy night, and she ended up being here like an hour past the service. And so, anyhow, again, you don't know why you do these things, but again, God opens doors. Then Saturday moved in. We wanted to be a part of the community. And so for us, we have a neighboring park that's very close. And then I wear dual hats because I'm on our Maple Leaf Community Council, which is our neighborhood association here in Seattle. But also, then I got a chance to, um, wear the hat from the church to be able to encourage and do those things. And so we had um, just over 6,500 eggs that we did. And we partnered with a church that brought like 1,500. Um, and we did this huge Easter egg hunt up at the park. And so that was a community based event. And so that was there. One thing I would say is you talked about voice train. I was yelling because we thought we had a megaphone that was there. But, when you get, I don't know, 500 plus people and a lot of them are kiddos anxious to get to eggs, it is tough in an open air park to try to get some of that. So I used my big boy voice, but it did take a toll going into Sunday. So we did that. That was great. Sunday rolled into, for us, we only have one Sunday service in the morning, but we doubled up. So we have a tradition. Green Lake is one of the most visited parks in all Seattle. And there's this old aqua theater. So like back in the day, they had like platforms and stuff. They would have uh, like diving events and stuff like that. It was like this big thing. And back in the, I think like the Rolling Stones even played there because someone came up on Sunday and was like, "You've now shared the stage with the Stones." And that wasn't the intent, but they have this aqua theater that is pretty cool, and our church rents that. And so we got a chance to have people that were there. So it's sunrise. So you're up at, the service starts at 6:30. And so again, probably over half of those people that showed up for that don't attend our church. They just live in the community. They came. One person that was their first sunrise service, as it was mine. So we've been here 3 Easters, and that was the first one because of the pandemic that we had. So that was a change. And then we rolled into a breakfast that comes after that here back at the church, and then Sunday service. And so again, you see more of those things, and it's a team effort. The whole staff, it takes all of them that we have, and a ton of our volunteers. That's what I'm saying. Like if you're a layperson, you're listening to this, we couldn't have pulled any of those things off if we didn't have our volunteers. So huge shout out and thank you to them. But so it takes a toll. It's worth it. People show up and people come. It is the Super Bowl. If there's going to be, the C&E Christmas and Easter people, Easter tends to be the one that is going to be historically for most churches the most well attended. And so we had that. And so again, that is a lot. And if you haven't been a part of that and you're there, again, like you said, 3, 4, multiple days of speaking engagements or engagement with the community, and that's what we live for. But it does. You need a place to kind of to catch up after that. Mine was again, I hop on and I go to a conference and I do some of those things. So um, yeah, that's the hardship. But for me, like you said, you led into a series. Mine intentionally had a series that came out of Easter. So I just wrapped that up with my third one this past week. So Easter started that week 1, then we had 2 weeks. So my intent was, again, if we had people that came, just kind of say, "Hey, come back, listen to the series." But as we're going to dive in here a little bit, sometimes that's tough, and I was trying to be proactive and trying to get people to engage after the fact if they only showed up, um, like any good cliffhanger to kind of say, "Hey, here's what we're talking about. Here's the resurrection. Christ came to die for these things, but here's some of the other things," and lay that out over a 3-week sermon series. So that's what I kind of did. That's the nuts and bolts of why we did it. But yeah, let's jump into, like you're saying, what are some of the potential pitfalls? What are the fallbacks? What are things we need to be cognizant of? And how do we navigate those potholes as we navigate these times.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're curious, if you're one of our listeners, and just if you haven't listened to it, you can go back. But if you want to hear, we talked about holidays and special events in season 2, where we kind of covered just kind of a big broad range of what we do for holidays and special events. We talked about Halloween and Mother's and Father's Day and kind of all those things. So if you want to go back and listen to episode 5 in season 2, that's where we kind of covered that. And like I said, that's one of our things we're doing this season, is diving deeper than into some of these topics. And so as we dive into this topic today, and like I said, to dive deeper, that's kind of our angle we wanted to take, was because so we have these big events, we have these holidays, we have these things like Easter, like, whatever it would be, whether it's a holiday or it's just a big event or a big, conference or revival thing that you do with your church, or like you said, just like in our community, the Boise Harvest with Greg Laurie, or whatever it is, right? There's these things, and we always build up to them, and we always hear a lot of, I think, talk and resource about, how do you facilitate it logistically and kind of leading up, advertising, marketing, all these things up to these events. But then we never really talk about the aftermath. Right. And I think not only there is some aftermath, like you said, just within our churches logistically, of like, how are we moving our mission forward, and how do we use those events, to contribute to the bigger mission or to the Great Commission and those kinds of things. And that's very important. Right. But I think the other side of it is, what do we do for our leaders, for our teams, especially even pastors in that letdown? Because I'll tell you, in pastor circles, I don't know if you picked up on this, TJ, but I've definitely felt that, is that every pastor, when you talk about the Easter fall off, like every pastor knows what you mean. Right. Again, we got to ramp up to this, right? We get ready. Like I said, we have extra chairs in the sanctuary. We print extra bulletins. We're expecting this big number on Easter. And for a lot of us, that happens, right? And we have the bigger number. I'll tell you, that happened to Oregon Trail, right? Like we had our biggest attended Sunday, right, on Easter Sunday of the year since last Easter, right? I mean, having literally on Easter Sunday. But then the next Sunday was one of our lowest attended Sundays of the year. Right. And that's the letdown, right? And I think just in just momentum of just church growth, right? That's a huge letdown. But I think even beyond that, even just beyond the metrics of church, is that like I said, there's this emotional and this spiritual build up to something like a big event or to Easter Sunday. And again, even we get this high, right? Like, yeah, lots of people came, and we have this hope, right? Of, yeah, like we're making a difference. Like people are responding, they show up. And then there's this letdown, right? And as we fall off the cliff on the other side. And I think the reality is there's a lot of emotional and spiritual vulnerability that comes with those moments. I think when you pour so much of yourself into your sermon, into the extra events, into the community events, the advertising, the invitations, right, the presentation of the gospel, I mean, all of those things, and then there's this letdown. And to say that not just right after Easter, but I think this is really true, to say that Sunday evening and Mondays are a very vulnerable time for most pastors and church leaders, because we pour ourselves out, right, into Sunday and into the services and into all those kind of things. And then there's this point, right, where you have poured yourself out and you're empty. Whether you're empty emotionally, and especially, I guess, even if it doesn't go well, right? Like it kind of, I mean, it becomes a trap, like really, really bad. What if Easter was a normal day, right? You threw in all this extra and you didn't have the huge attendance. Or even just on a normal Sunday, right? Like you have this message that you felt like God has really inspired you, and you give it, and you're present, and nobody responds, right? The altar's empty, right? And again, you walk, and I don't know about you, but I've walked off the stage sometimes and be like, wow, that was a great sermon. I was so excited to give it. And then you hear no feedback, right? And you're like, wow, maybe I'm terrible.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of times I've learned that sometimes those are the ones you understand. Those are the ones that people are contemplating. Like they don't have it. There's a self-reflection period almost that has to take place in some of those. Again, you'll know based on your sermon, but like sometimes those are the ones that hit, and they don't verbalize it like all the time right away, but they're there. I've heard it in some circles, not from a drinking standpoint. That's usually where it is, but I've heard it described as the post Easter hangover, right? Like that there is this, like you said, there's a high, and then there is this kind of subsequent low kind of piece that goes with that. And even to be cognizant, I know that some pastors are saying, like, I talked about intentionally having another group come back, that you put all this emphasis in, you roll out the red carpet. You talked about that from media, production levels, and every other front. And then if they show up the next Sunday and it's like an afterthought, like because we are tired and we're not ready to receive them again, like what does that say to people as well? And so kind of like just understanding that whole piece. But yes, it is a vulnerable time. In fact, when I was talking with one of the pastors at the conference, he was talking about that from a Monday standpoint. Monday is a very difficult thing to have your day off. He said, because what you want to be able to do is to give your best on that day. And so if you're feeling burnt out, if there is a letdown, you want to be able to give your best during that time. So if you're like wiped out on Monday and that is the day that you give to your family and stuff like that, and your first reaction is, I don't want to go in, I just want to unplug, I just need to continue to try to help. He said, man, that's not edifying. So he said, honestly, what he did was kind of like what you do. And that kind of hit home for me because my day is Monday. And sometimes I find myself in this situation. But he was saying, I want to intentionally give, like you said, like a Friday, because then I am better rested to present on Sunday. I'm not compromising that my family is getting the leftovers after an event that's like this, where you're just so worn out that you're like, okay, you guys could have. And he just said, I talked with my leadership, and he said, honestly, this was the part that said, hey, look, I'm going to intentionally schedule Mondays just to be a little bit lighter for me because I know that that's going to happen. And, there's books on this, cheating on the church kind of thing. Like if I'm going to cheat on this part, not to dishonor my calling, but that's going to be the day where I'll catch back up. That's the day where I'll intentionally, get back on track. But I know that day isn't like as taxing. Where for me, sometimes I'm just looking for just a good place to curl up and catch a nap to catch my breath. So yeah, I think these things are real. Again, they're playing themselves out, but really, if we're doing that, if we're being intentional, and again, like we don't know. Like when I hear when you talk about if people don't respond in a way that you thought they might respond to your message, remembering what is our scorecard? Why are we doing it? What we're doing? And so, like, if we're doing it for our own fodder or just to hear that praise or those things, as opposed to being obedience to God, one of the things we talked about was our identity as a movement for the Church of God. And, one of the things that the characteristic sets us apart is unity. And that's in our structure. Like you and I choose to be associated. We're not like mandated by a regional conference or director that says, if you and Brian don't meet, then, we're going to kick you out of our movement. It's that a loose autonomy, but it has a space where we can love and come back together. So I appreciate those things. I really like what we do. But if you really are obedient and you feel like you said, I felt this is what I was supposed to preach, we have to find solace in that. And we have to know that that's where God's laid us to go. That's our path. We're in his will. And that's what I think. But those have been some of the things that I've been pondering through this last bit.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So again, I think, and we've kind of been talking about this, but literally I have three kind of main, I guess, tips, right? Or concepts, right, to keep in mind again in this. And I think the first one you talked about when talking about, taking Mondays off or working on Mondays or whatever it is, the first concept would be just learn yourself. But the concept is protect yourself from yourself. right? But I mean, literally, the idea is protect yourself from this because you know it's coming, right? And you know when your most vulnerable times are, right? And so when just protect yourself from that, set up those boundaries again. And I don't know, I don't know how true the statistics are. I don't know about you, but I always feel a little I don't always believe every statistic that I read, right? You're kind of like, I'm like, I don't know, is that really, how do I know that's true? But the reality is, but again, and especially when I read any kind of statistic around pornography use, especially pornography use in the church, because it always seems like it's so extreme. And again, I don't deny that it's a problem. I mean, I know that it's a problem, right? And I know that there are pastors out there that struggle with, with pornography and purity and whatever and sexual sin. And again, I don't deny that at all. But yet, again, I've heard the statistic that the busiest time for porn websites is Sunday evening and Monday, and that there's a correlation to that's when pastors are indulging their flesh, right? And again, I don't know if that how true that is, but I think it does speak to the bigger concept that we're talking about. Right? If you know that's a vulnerable time for you, then protect yourself, especially in those times. I mean, now again, if you're struggling with any kind of sexual sin, you need to again confess and find healing and put yourself boundary. I mean, there again, not just that, like you said, again, I mean, you brought up alcohol, right? If that's a temptation for you, right? Then protect yourself, especially in those moments when you're most vulnerable, right? Sunday afternoon, evening, and Mondays. To say that, like, again, that's one of the reasons I don't take Monday off. And you kind of said that is because I just know myself. Like if I would be giving my family my leftovers, I would be making plans for the next week. I mean, there's so many reasons why Monday just doesn't work for me, to take it off and for my personality and just what I know about myself. The other thing I say to that is that even actually Sunday afternoons, and I've found that those Sunday afternoon and evenings are truly kind of vulnerable times for me. And I think, just even emotionally and spiritually, because again, I walk off the stage, after I giving my sermon for the second time on Sunday in our second service. And I love speaking. And that kind of fills me up in a lot of ways. And so I feel energized, like, interacting with people after the church. And when it's done, I feel that, but I physically feel there's a drop off for me when I get home after church on Sunday. Right. And I'm kind of on this emotional, spiritual high of the day. And, again, because preaching fills me up and I love it, to do that. But then there's that fall off. Right. And I've learned again in that one is like, I mean, I'm tempted to go home and just take a nap. Right. And you go to sleep. But I also find is that when I nap, then I don't sleep well the next night. Right. And so again, I have to kind of protect myself from that because I'm spiritually and emotionally drained, like that. And then I physically feel drained when I get home. And so, but that's honestly one of the things, like, and I don't know how my wife feels. I think my wife hates it actually. But it's kind of become where that's one of the times where I go and golf on Sunday afternoons or in the evening. Right. And part of it is because in Sundays, like the course is not as busy in Sunday afternoons or evenings. Right. Because again, there's some different reasons for that. So I like to go out there because it's just a lot more laid back. But I think the other part of that is that it helps me be physically active instead of just crashing, right? To where I get a good night's sleep on Sunday night. Because, and again, there are times when I've given into that and just crashed in the afternoon and just, laid around and watched golf, whatever, and take a nap and kind of whatever. But then it truly messes me up for the next couple of days, right? Physically and like my sleep pattern. So good. I've kind of learned that, right? And again, the other side is I go to work on Monday, right? Is so that I can, get moving to that. And again, so then I take Fridays off. So just protect yourself from yourself. And I think that's protect yourself from those vulnerable times and just know that they're coming.
Yeah, no, I think that those are good. I mean, I don't know all the statistics as well, but yes, there is a part. I mean, I know even if you extrapolate that from a standpoint of growing up in my era, there was a lot of people that were like, I'm going to go out and do whatever I do on Saturday nights, but I'll be in church on Sunday morning. And so there's parts of that, whatever that may be for you, just like you said, protecting yourself. I look at it sometimes as like filters. So like if I can establish, again, being a child of the 80s, knowing is half the battle, GI Joe. So if you know like part of your struggle, like when you're saying protect yourself, you can set safeguards like you just said, like, hey, I'm not going to completely unplug or have this nap time here, but you can set different things, because I don't think anyone sets themselves, again, uh, let's just say you were talking sexual sin, like let's say infidelity from that standpoint, even like whatever it may be. Um, I don't think someone says like, "Oh, I really want to just implode my life. I want to lose my kids, my family, my financial peace, and all those things. I
Yeah.
just want to light a match and burn it all down." I think it's a lot of individual steps that we've made to get to that point. So again, if we know that that's something we're up against, you know, if we were talking alcohol, like I said, you have a sponsor, you have different things, but if you could add different filters like stop signs, if you blow through all six of those in protecting yourself from yourself, then you've set some safeguards that if you get to like stop sign number four, you're like, oh crud, I'm really getting close to the edge here. And so hopefully that you don't do that. So whatever that means to you in your own life or your own walk, um, you know, what is that? And again, protecting yourself from yourself, if you know those things, that also helps you get to the root of the problem as well. Like, so if we know that, then we can get there. Because again, all these things mask or they do things. Oftentimes we're giving into our fleshly desires or sin or those things. And ultimately, all we're doing is self medicating. And so, like, if we can get to
Yeah.
the root of that, we can address it. And hopefully, then in this piece, not to get like, I was just at a conference, like, let's not get too churchy here, but the sanctification piece, right? Like, that's what we're talking about, is that if we did get to a point where some of those things are no longer an obstacle in our life, that's where we desire to be. So how do we get to that point? So when I hear that, when I'm processing that, those would be some of my takeaway or kind of thoughts that I look at
Yeah.
from the one part.
Absolutely. So good. Yeah. So first concept, just protect yourself. Okay. The second concept, and you kind of talked about it, and it was kind of very connected to the conference you were just at, but I think the concept would be have your identity in Christ, not in earthly success. Right. And because again, I think part of that, like I said, whether the event goes really well or it goes terrible, God is more interested in your faithfulness and your obedience, right, than he is about your hype or your worldly success. And so, and that does come back to our identity, even as leaders and as pastors and as Christians, right? The fact that our identity is God's child. I'm doing this for his glory. I'm not doing it for just to build a big church, right? Or to have, to tout the impressive numbers of who came forward to the altar, or, or whatever. Again, like what, and like you said, that dives deeper into these core issues that we have to be able to admit about our own, flesh, is that, man, my identity might be misplaced, right? If I see this, where I have these huge emotional, spiritual, even physical letdowns after Sunday or after Easter or after a big event.
Yeah. I mean, I think those are the things. And again, I think anytime we look at these things, uh, or if you felt this way and you haven't been able to put your finger on it, identify it. I mean, in any 12 step or other thing is admitting that you have a problem, right? Like, or that there is an obstacle in front of you, and then you can work at solving that. Again, we're also saying in solving that, that requires a lot of our faith in who God is and going back to him to be our foundational rock at that part. But yeah, you have to be able to admit that you have the problem or you see it, or in my instance, is it, processing even at the conference to say, hey, yeah, I get that. And I don't want to give my family these parts that are less than, we see biblically when we're giving of ourself, even as an offering, like whatever it is, time, talent, treasure, we talk of, framework of first fruits. We're not talking about like our leftover rotted pieces, like, oh, I got to give 10% or something if we have to quantify it. Like, go pick the nastiest, we have 100 apples, like go pick the, nastiest 10 apples and give those away, the ones with the wormholes and those things. Like, that's not what we're talking about. We don't do that in our ministry. We shouldn't do that in our personal life as well. And so I think, again, this is all framework, like you said, protect ourselves from ourselves. How do we do these things? Again, in those moments of vulnerability, being able to stand up to Satan because of our faith and also say, like, look, this is who we are, and we do this because of the one who did it for us. And so I think all those are good. They're good reminders as we process this to remember why we do what we do. And again, it's not, hopefully, we're not driven by an ego or a piece. And again, if you're listening to this, this is like kind of countercultural and stuff like that, because we're so used to looking at a scorecard based on numerics. But if, like, maybe you're a lay leader, maybe evaluate, like, what does it mean to be better engaged with your community, with your pastor, as opposed to, like, we look at things numerically of, oh, they had 300 people show up on Easter Sunday. Like, throughout the rest of the time, like, what are we seeing that bears fruit? Like, where are those, maybe we have 150, but we have 150 people that are, like, on fire. They're impacting the community. Those other supplemental things that we're talking about, those lay people are the ones that are stepping up. They're the ones hanging those door hangers. They're the ones that are filling those Easter eggs in our part. Those are the people that are really making a difference as well. So sometimes we have to, again, maybe, I'm not saying become lackadaisical and not do those things. I'm just saying, what is our determinant factor and why do we do it? We have this phrase in our movement that's called Jesus is the subject. If it's anything other than that, then maybe it's time we have to sit down and have a conversation about it. But hopefully, again, as we had this part, this episode has been an encouragement to somebody, or they somewhere in this had a hearty amen to say, hey, I've been there. And so thanks, B, for helping lead us through this. And I'm glad we got a chance to finally sit down and do this one.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and again, I think for that last concept that you just kind of addressed, right, which, I mean, we've talked around it again, is just kind of don't center everything on the big event. Don't center it on just the one Sunday of Easter, right? And again, it's the bigger picture of the Great Commission, of Jesus as the subject of where, like I said, we still do these events, but they become just a piece of the bigger puzzle, right? And so again, if that piece, even completely fails, it doesn't mean that your mission is a failure, right? Or the bigger picture of what we're trying to accomplish. And again, so it does go beyond just of planning and teaching against Easter being just a one-day thing. Like, it's not just about Easter, it's about your ongoing faith, right? It's about you coming back, like you said, even planning that way. Like you said, the cliffhanger, starting a series on Easter versus ending a series on Easter. Like, some of those things, again, work into putting that piece into the bigger puzzle. So yeah, absolutely. I'm glad we finally got this one done. And like I said, and just, you said, I hope that this episode is an encouragement to you, no matter what your role is in the church, but just protect yourself, right? Even from yourself, make sure your identity is in the right place, and always keep in mind the bigger picture of what God's calling us to do as his church, right? Not just in our own local context. And obviously that is important, but the bigger mission, right? And what we're a part of. So yeah, keep pressing on, even so that we don't get to where we're just bouncing from big event to big event. Right. But yeah, we are looking at the bigger picture of the journey, and that we can be faithful servants of everything God's called us to do.
Acts 20:28. So guard yourselves and God's people. Feed and shepherd God's flock, his church, purchased with his own blood, over which the Holy Spirit has appointed you as leaders. The Acts 2028 podcast is a broadcast production of In His Grip Publishing. Our theme music is Achievement by Giovanni Bruno. We'd love to hear from you on our social media accounts or through email. You can like us on Facebook and follow us on Instagram at Acts 2028 Podcast, or send us an email at acts2028podcast@gmail.com. Please subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, leave us ratings and reviews, and even give us your email so you can be notified of new episodes. Thank you for listening, and until next time, we hope that you will lead wherever God has put you, and together we can all live out Acts 20:28 as we serve in the established church.